So I've worked 16 complete rows and I'm ready for the first increase. As you can see, I have my first stitch marker here, and this is the first stitch here is the selvage stitch, and that's knit and garter stitch. And then we have our stitch marker, we'll knit the first stitch, which is selvage, slide our stitch marker off, and then we're going to actually perform a right leaning increase into the first knit stitch of the eyelet cable. And what that will do is it will create 2 knit stitches, and it actually becomes a knit 2 here, and we'll still have the purl 1, which will increase to later on as we move forward through the pattern. So what we'll do is go ahead and set up, and we'll go ahead and knit that selvage stitch, slide it off, slip the marker, and to perform the right leaning increase, what we're going to do is knit into the right leg of the stitch directly below that knit stitch. And so I like to just loosen it first, and then I'm going to go into that leg as if to knit it. Now, some people like to place that onto the needle, and that's absolutely fine. You can do that. My recommendation is if you do that, please keep it towards the tip of your needle and then knit, because otherwise you don't want to stretch that stitch out too much. If you move it too far down your needle, it can actually create a really long and loose stockinette stitch, and you don't want that. What I like to do is just stick my needle right into that stitch and knit it. So I'll do it again. So again, we're going into the leg below as if to knit. So I loosen it first, then I'm going to just stick my needle right into it and knit. And then we'll go ahead and knit the stitch. So essentially what that does is it creates 2 knit stitches. Lastly, what I'll do is I like to use my stitch marker to indicate where I increase. So that way, if I put this down and come back to it a little bit later, I remember, okay, that's my first increase, that's a knit 2, and then you just continue on in pattern. Okay, so I've knit to the end of the row, and I just performed my 4-stitch left yarn over cable. And so I'm going to purl the next stitch, and remember we're going to also work an increase into this stitch. So this increase is going to be our left leaning increase, and to perform this increase, what we'll do is we're going to first knit this stitch, and then we're going into the stitch below that stitch. So let me move back. So we're knitting this stitch and we're going into the stitch below. The thing to remember on the left leaning increase is that once you knit that stitch, you're actually going not into this stitch, but into the stitch that was below it. So you're going into the leg, the left leg of this stitch here. So you actually lift that, place it on your needle. So again, you just kind of go under that leg and lift it, and then you're going to knit it through the back loop and slide it off your needle. So I'll do it again. So in order to create the left leaning lifted increase, we're going to knit it, knit that stitch. We're going not into this leg, but into the leg below it, and just grabbing it and placing it, again keeping it on the tip of your needle so you don't stretch out the stitch too much, and then you're going to knit it through the back loop, and that's going to create 2 stockinette stitches. Again, what I like to do next is I'll slide these 2 stitches over and place a marker here so I remember that's my knit 2 increase, but I'll wait to do that. And then I'm going to slide my marker and knit my selvage stitch. We are now ready to make our first increase into the purl stitch. So as you can see in the center of our screen, we have the eyelet cable. I knit my selvage stitch, slid the marker, I knit 2, that was the very first increase, and we're increasing in that very first purl stitch here, and then on the other side we are going to do a left leaning lifted increase into the last outer purl stitch on the other side. But this is the first one into our first purl stitch, and it will be a right leaning increase. So to perform this, what you'll do is you will purl the stitch first, and then you're going to purl into the stitch below the stitch you just purled. So what does that mean? We're going to go into this stitch, but when you purl, it's actually going to be 2 below, because you don't want to purl. This is the stitch you just purled, so not this one, but the one below. And you literally lift it onto the very tip of your needle from the bottom up. So I'll do it again. You just lift it from the tip of your needle to the bottom up, move your yarn in front, and then you're going to purl. And as I said before, what you really want to be cognizant of is not sliding that and stretching that stitch out, but keeping it just right on your needle tips. So I'll go ahead and do it again. So to create the 2 purl stitches, you're going to lift it from the bottom up onto your needle, keep it close to the tip, and then you're going to simply purl that stitch, and I will slip my marker. So I've now worked to the very last eyelet cable panel, to the last purl stitch of that panel, and what we're going to do is create a purl 2 here that's left leaning. So I went ahead, I worked my knit 2, I've worked the purl 1, we'll be increasing here next as our last and final increase. I worked across the panel of the eyelet cable, and now in order to create that increase, what you'll do is you're not going into the stitch below, you're actually going to the second stitch. So you count 1 stitch and this one. You're going into that stitch from top to bottom, and you're actually going to lift it onto the very tip of your needle and then purl the stitch. So we'll do that again. So count down, not this stitch, but the second stitch. Lift it onto the tip of your needle. Again, you don't want to stretch out that stitch, so keep it on your needle tips. And then go ahead and just purl that stitch. And then you will purl the second stitch. And now what we have is a purl 2. That's left leaning.